Now, let's learn the concept of accommodation bill. To begin with, let's understand its meaning first. Often it happens that in order to fulfill short-term financial need, a bill is drawn and accepted. The basic purpose of drawing such bills is to render mutual help and not for trading purposes. Such bills are commonly known as accommodation bills. So far, we have learnt about the trade bills, that is, the bills that are drawn for trade purposes. We used to have two parties, drawer, who is the seller, and drawee, who is the purchaser. Accommodation bills, on the other hand, are drawn for mutual help. So here, drawer is the borrower and drawee is the lender. Now, let's consider an example. Suppose there is a person, Mr. A, who is in urgent need of rupees 10,000. Having friendly relationship with Mr. B, A approaches him and asks him to lend this amount. Now, Mr. B is himself facing shortage of funds. But in order to help his friend, he accepts a bill drawn on him by Mr. A. Now, what do you think? Mr. A needed money, but he ends up drawing a bill. Now, will he get money? Well, we already learnt that a holder of a bill can get the bill discounted with the bank. So here also the same thing happens. Mr. A gets the bill discounted with the bank and uses the amount so received. Now, on the due date, Mr. A will remit the amount to Mr. B, and in turn, Mr. B will meet the acceptance by making payment to the bank. So you see, in this case, the purposes of both Mr. B and Mr. A get fulfilled. Now, let's move on to discuss the various cases of accommodation bills. As such, these are the three cases. We will now understand them one by one briefly. Let's first have the case 1. In this case, generally, the bill proceeds are used wholly by the drawer, only to meet his or her own requirement. Let's quickly go through the journal entries in this case. If you just have a mere glance, you will say, well, all these entries are exactly those that we learnt in the previous lessons. Thus, there is hardly any difference in terms of accounting treatment in this scenario. Moving on to the second case, here the bill proceeds are shared by both the parties, that is, the borrower and the lender. Let's have a quick look at these entries. Again, you will observe that all the entries are same, except this one. Here we have debited discounting charges in the two books. That is, both the parties are sharing the discounting charges. For instance, suppose bill amount is rupees 40,000 and the discounting charges are rupees 400. Now, if both the parties decided to share this amount equally, so they will bear the discounting charges equally, that is, of 200 each. Next, we have the third case. Here, both the parties draw accommodation bill on each other. So in this case also, all the journal entries remain the same. But however, if any one or both the parties become insolvent, then the bill will get dishonored. In that case, we will pass the journal entries as we learnt in case of dishonor of bill. Thus, you see that in all these cases, we need not to learn any new journal entries, since the recording of trade bill and that of accommodation bills are quite similar.